Welcome to The Long View. My name's Jesse Marble. It's a podcast with builders, investors, makers, doers, the people trying to bend the arc of the future a little bit in their own way. Today, I interview Mel Strong. Mel's a venture capital investor, early stage tech investor at a firm called Next Ventures. She was a kindergarten teacher, or maybe it was first grade. She was a teacher before she became a journalist, then spent a bulk of her career at Nike before starting Next Ventures with Lance Armstrong. Next has had some great early success, including investments like Aura Ring. I don't know if any of you all have the Aura Ring product that's been wildly successful. We talk about all kinds of fun stuff, what it's like to be a VC, some of the pain and rejection of sitting on the VC side of the table, what it's like to have a non-traditional career coming into venture, some thoughts on AI, and even some thoughts on and advice on mentorship and how to approach people when you want the kind of input that a mentor might provide. I'm confident you'll enjoy time with Mel. She's one of my favorite investors. Mel, thank you for coming today. So excited for this time together.
Likewise, Jesse. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your background. When people think about venture, some people go investment banking and MBA and maybe private equity. You have a different path into venture. You don't need to tell us, line by line, the blow by blow, but what is it that brought you to venture and Next Ventures specifically?
So you don't want me to start with I was born to New Jersey, Jersey Shore Hospital.
How many siblings do you have? What's your dad's name?
I got it. When I look back now, I get threads of why I'm here and why I love being here. But I am also really proud of the fact that I took a lot of hard left turns in my life and in my
Mm,
career. And I hope that that is one of the reasons why I am a good investor. But you're right, I did have a non-traditional background. So I taught first grade right out of undergrad. So I taught in a Teach for America school in West Philadelphia.
mm,
And I won't lie, there were points in my career after that where I omitted that from my story because I felt like it wasn't what I was supposed to say.
wow.
Certainly when I later took my first corporate job, I didn't feel like people wanted to hear that I had done something like that. I think they wanted to which I don't have. I think they'd wanted to hear some logos, some big flashy corporate experience, but which I didn't
Hmm.
have. And so I'm proud of that chapter. It was very hard. It was the hardest thing still that I've ever done. Most of my kids lived in the projects in West Philly. And so I saw a lot of things. Um, Lasted about 3 years in that job and then moved to DC, went back to school to get a master's in journalism. I'm really proud of journalism as well, and I found a lot of investors have experience in journalism because I think we like to do research and we like to tell stories about the truth,
Hmm.
and I think we're really fascinated by people, and certainly I know you can relate. That is one of the reasons why being an investor is so exciting. But I, was an editor at Runner's World magazine and had the opportunity to interview a Nike athlete, this fantastic, woman named Joan Benoit Samuelson, who, ran the first women's Olympic marathon in 1984, which is very interesting as we head back into LA in 2 years. And honestly, I didn't know she was a Nike athlete. I had no interest in brands at that point. I was
Hmm.
living my dream of working at this magazine, working in the sport that I loved and had grown up participating in. But she really sold me on this idea of we need runners working at Nike, people who understood the sport and could connect to the community. And so I took her advice and applied for an entry level job at Nike, and got a call in 2002 to come out to Beaverton. It was terrifying because I had never lived on the West Coast, never done anything corporate.
Hmm.
It was hard, and it took a while to the culture of corporate and Nike in particular, but I spent a good 17 years there and did a whole bunch of things. If you work at a big company like that, you can live all over the world. You can work on all kinds of different projects and categories. I often tell younger people that I worked on building brand sites before e-commerce. It's, like, even funny to say out loud now that we had that showed you awesome products, buy them. So part of, like, the obviously the wave of e-commerce and,
Hmm.
digital products, working on the apps, like Nike Training Club and Nike Run Club, kinda opened my eyes to innovation, what it was like to build within the safety of a big company, of course. But I think those experiences helped me understand that I had missed a really interesting chapter in business, which was what it takes to start something from 0 to 1. And so I
Hmm.
had started to surround myself with people who were either doing the building or investing in the building, brought me into venture capital, an asset class or a space that I really knew much about. I did not grow up with investors in my life. So I had to seek out people who were willing to spend time with me and really educate me. And so that became my sort of opening into this world of being a fund manager and a managing partner.
Okay, a couple quick things. Number one, you were at Nike for 17 years. This is a random just call out. My business partner at Wildwood, David Wagner, was also at VF Corporation for 17 years. I don't know if you knew that parallel data point. 17 years seems to be a great way to train yourself for being an emerging manager. Um,
Noted.
you talk about this idea of mentorship. I want to double click on that for a bit. I think people talk about wanting to get help and wanting to have people speak into them, but the very tactical 5 foot elevation of how did you do that? How did you find those people? Did you say, I want you to be my mentor? Let's meet quarterly or monthly? Did you just, sometimes people will say they don't tell the mentor, they just go ask them questions. How did you think about stepping into a new industry, and how did you structure that mentorship and learning?
That's a great question. I think I oriented that conversation around what I thought would be most likely to engage that person. So I think there are people who are famously um, proactively mentoring, right? And so with those people, I think I was a little more open around, can we like make this official and formal? And could you do me the honor? And I think with a lot of people, I just tried to find myself in rooms with them, whether that was spending more time in spaces where investors and founders who I admired were building and living and breathing, or cold calling folks. um, I am still surprised by how well that, depending on how you frame that outreach. Um, but I always tried to put myself in the shoes of that person and think about how spending time with me could be valuable for them. And I
Hmm.
think that's actually an important learning for founders as well, because obviously I'm in the privileged seat of having a lot of folks reach out to me. And so I've seen all the ways, as I know you have, the good and the bad and the kind of in between of how to frame a cold outreach in a way that doesn't feel like AI generated it. And two, is compelling enough that despite this maybe being a company that's too early or too late or not the right fit, I'm curious enough and interested enough to want to have that call. And I framed my outreach that way as well. I just knew to frame my own story, and that's when I felt like some of my early days of teaching journalism. Nike works sometimes for people and sometimes zero interest in the fact that I worked there, and so I just tried to do enough work with the people that I thought would be good mentors, formally or informally, and understood what make them tick. I'm still really good at that, and that's where AI is quite helpful in helping me background folks. But if you played lacrosse in high school and college, I could probably find a way to connect our mutual love of lacrosse and have that be
Hmm.
the entree into a more personal and meaningful relationship than, "Hey, I am inspired by you. Will you make time for me?"
Well, and I see this a lot now with cold outreach. AI will help people write that first sentence. It'll be like, "Hey, I saw that you also are in Colorado." And it feels like, okay, it's like trying to connect, but it doesn't quite feel human. Any other like don't do advice, the like wall of shame stuff for I'm not saying you need to say this is, reaching out to you personally, Mel, but like, what are some of the bad ways people have asked for meetings, asked for advice, asked for input?
Whew. I
A lot.
personally
There's a lot of them.
can I pick your brain?
Hmm.
Is a tough one for me. It's a tough one for me because, as you know, I had a brain injury a couple of years ago. And so that has like this like double entendre for me that is like sort
Yeah.
of like too close to home. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, do you really want to pick my brain? Are you sure?
Just to, just yeah. Pick another phrase.
Totally. And
Yeah.
then I don't know if this is unique to women. I feel like we get asked a lot to do things for free. And
Mm-hmm.
there is this sense of, um, you're going to help me because you're kind or because there's some scarcity mindset associated with the world I grew up in. And again, this is maybe a bit of the chip on my shoulder showing through. Um, I think it's really important to do enough work to know how to connect personally. Um, but the pick your brain introduction doesn't always work for me. Like, help me find another way to engage with you that's interesting. No, just do enough. And again, like AI has made this so that if you haven't at least done that amount of work to know that pitching me on some transportation or supply chain business is probably not the right way to start because in those kinds of companies, like I don't spend time even answering those emails anymore. Um, I believe, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I believe one of the things AI is going to do for us as a species is enable more desire for meaningful, genuine human interaction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in order to show up and start a relationship in a meaningful and genuine way, you have an intention off the bat. But if it starts with a transaction, if it starts with what's obvious, a cut and paste, those are never going to work.
Yeah. There was a thread in there that you mentioned, especially around maybe perhaps how some men treat you as a female investor is what doesn't work is coming across entitled to your time. Right. That's certainly hard to get to work if somebody sort of thinks they're doing you a favor or something like that.
Yeah, that doesn't happen as much,
Mm.
but it has happened. It happened early on in my corporate life for sure. It was entry level and it showed, right? I was wildly insecure. And then it happened in early days in venture when we hadn't had enough opportunity to show whether we were any good at this. And I think that insecurity was also showing. And then I think there are people, I wouldn't say they prey on that, but I think they're opportunistic and they sort of take advantage of that newness and naivety. And so I've done a better job over the years of just being really thoughtful about my time and the value of it, and making sure that I'm spending it with people who will hopefully take our time and turn it into something great, right? Whether
Mm.
it's just shared lessons and
Hmm.
learnings, or something very mutual. Like 9 times out of 10, with a founder or anyone in this space, I feel like I come away with another perspective and another way of looking at things, or just some lesson learned through community that you can't learn on
Hmm.
your own. And those
That's
are
good.
pretty powerful moments.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let's talk about Nike and the transition to venture capital, going from big corporate, all of the highs, lows, pros and cons of that lifestyle to being a fund manager and an emerging manager, which what what might be interesting for you to talk about too is how, as a early VC, you are your own startup and you have to go raise money, and you face a lot of rejection from investors, aka limited partners, LPs. So, talk about Nike to Next Ventures, some of the learning, some of the moments, some of the entrepreneurial behind the scenes of that transition.
Hmm. I wasn't sure how the Nike story was going to play out for me once. It's sort of funny. I'm, almost 7 years out, actually, I think. June will be my 7-year anniversary of leaving, and thus the 7th year of Next Ventures existing, which is so crazy.
Hmm.
And I wondered, like, if it's like sitting in the seat today, I would look back and be like, "Oh, like, my time at Nike is still useful," or the relationships I made there, or the people, I've stayed connected with. And I have to say it's pretty the one thing I think is really important to understand, whether you've had the privilege of working at a big brand or a small brand or no regardless of your experience, if you can look at every chapter of your work and personal life, because they're both really valuable, they both make up who you are, the communities you're involved in, the hobbies you participate. But if you can look at them as all kind of force multipliers for your life and the ways in which you can be empathetic and enough to learn from them and a good enough person that they want to stay connected after you no longer have some transactional in your last role. And
Hmm.
I certainly saw this happen. There were friends that I had at Nike because we grew up together there and we worked on hard things together there. And there were people who immediately disappeared once I left because I was no longer valuable to them. I was no longer a VP or I was no longer useful for them to get their work done there. And that's fine. And that's human nature. But I think I also understood that there were really smart people in my life there that were going to go on to do really incredible things. And I wanted to take advantage of that access. There's a really smart person running Eli Lilly's direct to consumer business right now who used to work at Nike.
Hmm.
What? So, like, I find all of that really fascinating. Sometimes
Yeah.
being an investor feels like being like a cultural anthropologist where you track people and skill sets that are not to the industry they're in now, but you think could be applicable in other disciplines, and you just like, track those people. And now there's great tools to do this, right? We use Harmonic at our firm. It's a great way to find talent that's been at a company long enough that they might be next. And you kind of hunt those people before they've put up their profile notice that they're kind of ready and looking. I think about that relative to my time at Nike, that I think I've done a decent job of taking away people's time and their relative importance from my previous life and understanding that I believe there are people that have really unique things to contribute. And my belief that when they can no longer contribute those things at Nike, they might go build something or join a great company to build something at scale. And either way, I wanted to stay connected to those people. And I think that's just a really good skill set for founders to have to be in spaces that might be completely separate from where the space they're building in, but look at the people they're surrounded by in terms of their skill set and their aligned mission or view of the and see if you can't harness some of that for the thing that you're building towards.
Something comes to mind. There was an article by NFX, the venture firm NFX, and the article was called, sorry to be crass, but it's called Why VCs Become Assholes. And in the article, it talks about how structurally the job of venture is really, it's unique in some ways, but that most people in venture, if you're in it long enough, you slowly become a curmudgeon. And it's things like you're dealing with so many new people all the time and you're trying to assess companies and you're getting your heart broken. Sometimes the company you did believe in and you did invest in ends up not working out. One of the things about interacting with you, Mel, is that I've always gotten the sense that you work hard to battle that you do want to be kind and that you want to show up with grace towards people. And so I guess it's a question of how do you think about that? How do you stay strong in that? How do you stay the kind of investor who's not an asshole?
Mm, well, thank you for the compliment. I try. I'm gonna like a dirty secret with you that I struggle with. But I don't know that I always feel like VCs are my people.
Love it.
And so that, like dichotomy of identifying as a VC while
Mhm.
feeling extremely different from the archetype of VC
Mhm.
is something with every single day. Because you and I need VCs. We need awesome co-investors. Whether we're bringing them into the rounds we're participating in or we're bringing them in to invest in the great companies we've seeded, right? So I know that those relationships are important. And I know that we can be really helpful as investors by filtering through some of the good and maybe not so good investments.
Mhm.
But I have really struggled with not falling into either the trap of self-loathing of like, "Oh my gosh, am I becoming the thing I never wanted to
Mhm.
be?" While walking the line of actually proving that you can be a different type of person in this role. You can still be direct and tough and hard. And those are things I've had to learn how to be in this role because being idea of radical candor, being kindness is really important. You practice this as well. And often the feedback you founders can feel very harsh when it is intended to just be honest and direct. And I've
Mhm.
done that all kinds of ways, in some really terrible ways that I will never do again, and ways are more productive and hopefully become, a pattern of how to deliver hard messages in the future. But I struggle with this every day of walking into rooms of VCs, especially in San Francisco and in New York and in Miami and in the big markets, and feeling like a complete outsider. And I used
And
as a bad thing. Now I actually feel like that can be a bit of a competitive advantage and a point of differentiation for me and for
so how do you identify yourself? Is it because you have an operator background and you didn't come up through consulting and iBanking or something like that? But like how do you label the I'm different because?
yes. One, I actually have the advantage of being a woman, and I think in this space it's changing,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
20% of VCs in this country are women, so we're still kinda special in that way. So I think that's already one thing I don't need to say, right? Is I am clearly not a white man from Stanford or Harvard. You have to Google my background to know I didn't work or go to either of those universities. I flunked out of Lehigh and then did a hard reboot at Drexel. And again, part of the story that I didn't always tell, but that I'm now pretty proud of. Um, so I think some of just the way I present helps do that job for me. But then
Mhm.
I think it has to come through your style of communicating. I think that's why it's funny when Claude writes introductions for me and who it thinks I am, and then how I need to take all the stuff out that apparently VCs say. I'm like, "Oh, is this what they say?" So I can, like, own it in my own voice. It's been a good,
Mhm.
like, immediate feedback loop for how Claude is being perhaps used outside of my computer to help other VCs navigate and communicate, and it's been a reminder that my voice is actually more than good enough. And then I think now because we've invested in almost 30 companies, and this is the best part about being where we're at, 7 years in, deploying capital out of Fund 2, talk to our founders. Because I know I'm different. I can tell you about all my background, all the things I shared with you. But at the end of the day, like, you wanna hear, I think as a founder from other founders, you wanna hear that this person is different, will pick up the phone, can be your first call, can help you through hard things, can, through a very unique and differentiated experience from the other VCs on your cap table, actually help in a really unique way. And I think you and I both have the advantage of having that truth, of now
Mhm.
having founders being able to say the things that aren't as credible when you and I say them.
Right. Right. I love the line. It was actually a Steve Jobs he used to say, "If I have to tell you how innovative I am I really?" And I just like that idea of anytime we have to describe ourselves, why do we think we have to describe ourselves that way? Or are there ways and experiences and interactions we've had with enough people where it's not our job to talk about it. It's not our job to describe ourselves anymore. It exists out in the world. And hopefully we've lived in our own character and integrity enough that all of those things have added up, these drops in the bucket to it's not up to what it doesn't matter what I say anymore. And as we go to raise fund two, Mel, we're going to raise our second fund, a Wildwood, starting this fall. Um,
Yay.
yeah, it's much less about how sharp can we say it in the pitch deck, and um, you're welcome to talk to anybody you want, and
Yeah.
go from there.
Oh, fun too. And I know you and I have talked about this a little bit already. Fun too will feel very different. And I would say for a founder, why I think it's really exciting and important to acknowledge that you and I both decided to build firm versus join a firm.
Hmm.
And part of what makes that unique and hard and special is that we also have to go out and raise. And so you
Right.
can now talk to founders about the unique difficulty of raising your first fund, which is not unlike raising your first institutional round,
Hmm.
where you may have some traction, you may not. You have to sell the dream. You have to sell yourself, which is really hard unless you're egotistical, which works for some people, but I know you're not that way. And then you have like this track record of other great people who've seen you in action. So it is a very different experience going out to raise again. But I think it's what makes funds like ours so special. And I think one of the things that we're seeing in the universe of firms and VCs is there are like the blue chip multi-billion dollar under management funds
Hmm.
that will always exist, that are will necessary. Um, and then there are small funds like yours and mine where we built it from scratch. And so there's an incentive for you and I to work our butts off on behalf of our companies because we built the thing. So we have the founder mentality.
Hmm.
We've literally gone and begged people to believe in us and invest in us
Hmm.
in ways that are wildly uncomfortable with all of our friends and family. And then once you exploit all of them, you go to strangers, right? And so the
Hmm.
journey as a founding partner is not unlike the journey as a founder of a business. And I think that's important for firms like ours to remind founders of. We are also in that stage of constantly building, constantly proving ourselves. We are incentivized to work as hard, if not harder than our founders for the same reasons.
I heard a crazy stat, or there was some video I saw, maybe on LinkedIn or Instagram. It was Jeff Bezos talking about when he raised his seed round and how it was something like he pitched 30 people and got 6 yeses and 24 nos. And I was like, rookie numbers, bro, right? Like the number of meetings it took us. And now back to your comment of like, this is not a self-loathing. This is not a woe is us, right? We are blessed to be venture managers. You and I both, we love what we get to do. They're awesome perks of the job. Um, but we dealt with a lot of rejection along the way as well. And some of the behavior that founders dislike, sometimes from VCs, the ghosting and maybe not being kind and some of that stuff, venture managers have experienced that from LPs as well. And I think it's woe on us VCs when we pass that along, right? When
Right.
we've felt that frustration from LPs and then we accidentally do the same thing. I think there's a big washout there. But um, what a wild spot to be, because founders often think that VCs, like, that it's our money. That this fund is all, David and I. This is all our personal capital. That's not how it works. And I know that's not how your fund works either. But the rejection of pitching LPs is a very real journey too for us as managers.
Yeah. And those are like the moments when you learn the most. We just hired 2 new team members, which, as you know, is always an exciting and proud moment. And Felix Kim, our new principal who joined us from San Francisco, really wants to participate in raising our third fund with us, and we want that too. And we've talked a lot of, we're all athletes on our team, as you know, and so he's like, "So is it like training for a marathon? And like, how do I practice? And how do you recover from all the no's? And how do you keep your energy going?" And I'm like, it is kind of all those things. And I think one of the reasons why I love that the athlete mindset has become part of our firm's culture is athletes inevitably know how to fail. You spend more of your time failing as an athlete than you do winning. And so, it's been fun to like bring on new team members and kind of fed them with this idea of like, we're going to go through this process together and it's going to suck and it's going to be amazing. And that is why we think we are great partners for founders, because we have had that same lived experience of putting everything on the line to really try to have people believe in us. And then the huge responsibility that comes with that once you have onboarded an investor. There are a lot of similarities there, but you're right. It's such an honor. I still can't believe I get to do this every day. Like, I talked to my parents this morning. My dad was a college professor. He started his career at Bell Labs. He's a life leader and scientist. He is such an inspiration to me. And talking to him about what it means to invest other people's capital, the responsibility of that, the misses. He tracks all of our portfolio. So when a company goes under,
Oh, wow.
I hear
You
from
hear
Dr.
from your dad? No pressure. Oh my gosh. So yeah,
And so
most people's parents don't even understand what they do at all. So the fact that your dad can track along, that's amazing. I love it.
oh, trust me, he tracks, and then because he's a human computer scientist, like interaction scientist. He was early in AI. He has 2 PhDs, one in cultural anthropology actually, and the other in computer science. So he has been at the front of, frankly, a lot of what we have invested in. So we had conversations about Aura. Um, we had lots of conversations about Humane, an AI pit went
Hmm.
under in 5 minutes. And my dad my dad is like no holds barred. He's Scandinavian, right? He does not sugarcoat anything. He's like, "Listen, that was kind of a bad move. You like screwed that up. What'd you learn from that?" I'm like, "Oh God." I'm like 52. I'm like,
You're
"Oh
like, I
Dad, but
know, Dad. Like,
here's
I
how we
know.
diligence the company. This was like a moon shot. This is kind of like sometimes we take moon shots." He's like,
Please,
"Well,
Dad. Yeah.
you screwed that one up."
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he's proud of the Aura story. Why don't you give just a couple headlines from that? How y'all, because you were involved more than just an investor on that one too, personally. Give listeners, whoever's listening, a couple headlines, because I know as your friend, that's one I've certainly been cheering you on. New news recently, whenever it was in the last couple months of their most recent round. So yeah, tell us about Aura.
Yeah. Honestly, the Aura story starts for me with the Nike Plus Fuel Band. So, for folks who were either not alive or not paying attention when Nike tried to make a wearable, in 2012, so this was pre Apple Watch, Nike tried to make a wrist based device. We did make a wrist based device. It was $99, which in 2012 was pretty hefty. It was really cool looking because, of course, Nike's going to make something that looks amazing. I'd say about 50% of them never actually worked. Um, Mm.
Talk about like having 5 nines of uptime or something. There was no nines,
Yeah.
no nines, huh?
Yep. And we built an amazing experience as Nike does, right? So we created this thing called a Nike Fuel Score that was an amalgamation of activity that day and goals and progress towards your goals and community engagement. Nike is so good at building communities and brand stories and engaging people in something fun around sports. We absolutely sucked it at making hardware. And so for me as a marketer, I was still, I think, leading that in North America at that time. So my job was to introduce this product to core runners, people who were using, I think Garmin was around then for sure, but there were other watches and competitors in this space. I had to convince running specialty stores and performance athletes in running that this was a device they should be using because of XYZ. We had sunset that business maybe 2 years later for all the right reasons, learned a ton. It's funny at the time, like, looking now as an venture investor, I'm like, "That was an amazing attempt by a huge brand to try to do something different, to try
Hmm.
to enter a space that never had lived in before, to hire talent, to build a thing they've never built before, and to try to be credible there." At the time, it was like this abject failure. Wired wrote this magazine about, or skeptical about how terrible the product was. Um, but when I saw an Aura ring in 2018 on one of our Nike athletes, it sort of paid off all the things I felt we had learned trying to build
Oh,
the Fuel
wow.
Band.
Hmm.
This idea that you could build something that was embedded into a person's life. The form factor was really interesting. One of the things I learned certainly from the Fuel Band was, like, you have to the wrist is a competitive space on the human body, and there are a lot of brands competing for your wrist space. You have 10 fingers. My
A little
brain
better. Yeah.
gives me there maybe more TAM from a own part of your body perspective with fingers
Yeah.
versus wrists. Um, and I love that athletes were choosing to wear that Gen 1 Aura ring, not because Aura was paying them to wear their product at that time, but just because they were getting some real value. I still believe
Yeah.
athletes are
Hmm.
really interesting audience to observe because they often have access to anything and everything. And if you pull out paying them to wear their stuff and post about it on social media, what are they actually choosing to engage in? What are their daily habits? What are the choices they're organically going after because they really believe it's helping them perform better? And so I saw a Gen 1 ring in 2018. I was really interested in what it was. And when Lance and I started thinking of first few investments were going to be out of our firm, this, your first few investments raising signal the vision for your firm and for that fund. So we knew we needed stories that would excite future investors in our fund. If we had something really compelling to be like, see, we invested in this really cool company, we're going to do 20 more of these. Invest in us. And so we thought Aura could be one of those companies. So honestly, I had no business being in that round. It was a Series A in early 2019. We had not closed our first fund. We had no idea actually how much money we were going to raise. So that was scary. Um, it was
But
around Michael Dell, Will Smith, Mark Benioff, a few other people participated in. And this is one of Lance Armstrong, my co-founding partner, powers, is he has this incredible network. So I'd love to tell you that I could call Mark Benioff and he would answer, but he would not. Lance was like, "Hey, we're looking at this company and I think it's on your radar." That's how that first investment into Aura happened.
wow.
And as you know, about 2 years later, we obviously worked very closely with them as we do with all of our companies once we wrote that first check. And prior to 21, they had not launched a membership strategy. So I spent a lot of time at Nike working on membership. Um, so we were like, "Hey, can we help with that?" And then two, we were about to launch the Gen 3 ring with an orientation around like the kind of customer we actually wanted to target. Um, that they had sort of launched this beautiful thing and let the market decide.
Hmm.
And behold, no surprise to you and me, the people who were early adopters were tech bros. People who were by design going to churn out because they want to do the first thing first and then move
Yep.
on to the next first thing. So
Hmm.
not in our view the way to build a durable membership and customer base. And so we were invited to come in and kind of they asked me to come in as interim chief marketing officer in 21. Really cool opportunity. I mean, to sit with like really smart people, some in Finland where Aura's product team is HQ'd, some in San Francisco. But honestly, in those like post-COVID times, we were all still distributed. So that was an interesting challenge. But then to just like get in with that team and build membership. When we launched a Gucci collaboration at that time, which was super fun. I'd spent a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
time doing collabs when I ran Nike skateboarding. So bring the SB experience to the table at Aura. And help them source their first full-time CMO. So it was a wild, hard thing. I'm super grateful for the because I don't think VCs often get invited into businesses they've invested in that way. We're sometimes
Right.
asked in when things are going poorly. It wasn't the case with we're doing great. We're just like, we kind of just need someone with like background. And there aren't a lot of people on our cap table who've actually done the things you've done. And so that personally for me, that was a big moment, as you know. I was like, wow, maybe someone with my background can actually be good at this because I'm different. I'm different from a lot of the other amazing, like world-class investors on this cap table.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, let's talk about um, as we're getting closer on time here. AI is obviously quite the wave, quite the tailwind. Maybe that's an understatement. There's probably lots of hot takes out there right now about AI. We could talk about AI for hours. What would you say is do you have any hot takes? Do you have any themes in the market right now that you agree with or any that you actively feel that you're contrarian on?
As investors, we have to be incredibly optimistic about technology, about pe- people's behavior, society's resilience to change. So most days I get out of bed pretty optimistic about the future and AI's impact on that future.
Hmm.
I know it's
Me
going to
too.
change a lot of
Love it.
things. Okay, good. I'm so glad because it can get pretty dark, right? Like, are we going to have jobs? How are we going to pay for our lives? Are robots going to be doing all the things, right?
Hmm.
What we've learned so far, and this is where maybe being in my 50s and having lived through a few tech hype. None like this, by the way. This is a unique experience we are going through as a society. But went to Drexel University where buying an Apple computer was part of the deal, right? So, PC computing was just becoming part of the mainstream dialogue when I was going to school in the mid 90s. I remember navigating AOL, and figuring out how to buy things online in the
Hmm.
90s and all the ways in which that was an influence on my early professional life. And we came out of that okay. Right? There were
That's right.
some booms
That's right.
and,
We
and bu-
survived.
yeah, we survived and I think we'll survive again and again. But I do think as it relates to the space you and I invest in, I do think we're going to have time and more tools and more access to information
Hmm.
around our health and happiness. And I think we have to, everyday people, perhaps even especially people who have traditionally been underserved by our healthcare system, find ways to use those tools to their advantage. I know there's bifurcation. I know there's the haves nots. And I know sometimes technology makes that gap worse. I think one of our jobs as investors push against like force of bifurcation, of paying for great healthcare or not, of access to technology means you have access to a healthier and happy. So I think that's a responsibility that you and I and all VCs, frankly, have in this moment. I think COVID taught us that when we do have more time, I suspect we all will, whether we like it or not, that in many cases we will choose to use that time to invest in ourselves and our communities and spending more time in nature. I remember standing or sitting in line in our car to get into Arches in Moab during COVID, being like, oh, okay, people want to experience the outdoors. That's
Yes.
incredible. So I think there are themes that I know you're pulling on that I think are really exciting about how we're going to shift how we think about our time to not just trading the 30% efficiency we have as a workforce into more emails and meetings. So how can we be investing in companies that are giving people an alternative to that?
Hmm.
Um, I think in terms of how AI is impacting company building and hiring for companies, I worry. I worry about what it means for this generation of college kids to think about their first job. Because speaking freely, within 4 months, a new team for our firm, it's become real clear we don't need entry level employees or even middle level employees at our firm anymore. We can do actually in our decks to our LPs for Fund One and Fund Two, which we just got out the door last week. We have a
Yes,
slide. We have
congrats.
oh, is that a lift, as you know? Um, we have a slide celebrating our new human team members. Yay,
Yep.
Alex and
Hmm.
Daniela. And then we have a slide for our agents. Our new
Oh, wow. Here's who's doing the work at Next Ventures, and they're not humans.
diligencing, hard passes, writing those emails. We spend a lot of time saying no. And when you say no, you try to say no with context. So it's saying a no, if we do it right, is actually very time consuming. So how can we provide some context on why we said no that hopefully helps that founder with future investor conversations? And talent. Daniela has been using Harmonic to source like stealth talent we believe might be ready for their next and how we could potentially bring them into some of our portfolio companies versus losing them to a competitor. So, yeah, we have agents on our team now. And that's great, but I worry about all those young people who are looking for their first gig in this space and in a thousand others where AI is enabling faster and more efficient analysis, sourcing, research, copywriting, content creation. And what does that mean for how we think about employment in the future? I'm really worried about that. I don't know that I have a good answer.
Even for us, our kids, my oldest is 14, and my 12-year-old says he wants to be a software developer. And I'm like, man, he was born maybe 10 years too late or maybe 10 years too early. I don't know. I mean, you know, we'll see. It'll be fine. There'll be new jobs that are developed too that are not even here yet. But I am so curious as my kids step into, they're just starting this. What would I want to do when I grow up? Even
Mhm.
my 14-year-old made a comment about wanting to be a lawyer. I thought, first of all, I don't know why you'd want to be a lawyer. Livy, if you're listening, I'm sorry not to make fun of your choice of, um, but it's like, oh my gosh, Claude is amazing. And Claude really can do a lot that entry level lawyers can do. Not only a lot, much, much better. So what does that mean? What does that mean for her? I have no idea. I look at it through the lens of my own kids. Okay, a couple just rapid fire. Here's my two wrap up questions for you, Mel. Thank you for your time. This has been awesome. We could talk for hours. Is there one thing that you're bullish on that might surprise people, and one thing you're bearish on that might surprise people?
I'm bullish on the outdoors as a mental and physical health vehicle. Um, I suspect you are too. I look forward to their
No, I'm
future,
bearish. I'm bearish on that one, Mel. No, of course. Oh my gosh, all in,
right?
110%. Yeah.
But not in and this is where the outdoor industry doesn't help itself, right? Because I feel like we spend a lot of time in the industry talking about all the things we've always talked about, outdoor rec, which is, by the way, great. We need to enable more people having great experiences in the outdoors. See more conversation around there being a direct connection through healthcare systems and through education systems, prescribing and requiring time in nature for
Hmm.
kids and adults.
Hmm.
And so I am really interested in the ways in which we can create systems around that. So it doesn't feel like a nice to have. It doesn't feel like some cute project to get more kids outdoors. But no, actually, this is a requirement because we know if people spend 30 minutes outdoors every day, it has like significant mental and physical health
Yeah.
downstream effects.
Yep.
So a layup perhaps for you and me because we both love this space personally and professionally. As a healthcare investor, as a little more of a complement to Wildwood, I will just reiterate what we both feel in that space. I think that I am worried about that might be contrarian. I think we're going to always need people delivering healthcare. I think people thought post COVID there would be more telehealth adoption. I live in a rural community. So I live over an hour outside of Portland in Hood River. 50% of our community here are Latino and work with the farms and orchards that this community depends on. What I see in our own community is a lack of interest in replacing with technology as it relates to healthcare. And I think as it relates to lots of other aspects of their lives. We work with Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, and they struggle to serve rural communities. People will get in a car and drive 5 hours for a meeting with a doctor they could take on the phone or via Zoom.
Wow.
And that is interesting to me.
Hmm.
So I think we
Hmm.
need to be really careful about assuming AI, technology, telehealth are going to solve all of our problems related to access and serving patients where they are. I think we need to think about mobility challenges. I think we need to consider revisiting how to serve patients where they are. Despite, I think, Walmart and even Dollar Shave, I wasn't Dollar Shave Up, the dollar store, and a lot of these other like places that are hubs in there
Hmm.
to serve their markets with great products, but also some healthcare. Even though I think the first generation of those companies failed because it is surprise and way harder to deliver healthcare than we believed. I think there's going to be another wave of that. I think that there are other ways to learn from their mistakes, to think about being in communities, serving those communities in places and with people they already trust with great healthcare. So I'm kind of excited about that. It's a little antithetical to the wave of AI and health tech and um, this sort of like big enablement at scale. Like I think there will be just as much of a need and desire for people to go to a physical environment and talk to a person they trust, maybe someone who has had a lived experience that is similar to theirs, and receive great health care from that person. So that may be a little unpopular in the health tech space, but I am seeing that in my own community, and I'm hearing that through the healthcare partners that we work with in this state that if anything, AI is shining a light on our desire to have more than less real personal care as we explore our own healthcare journeys.
Well, and especially this idea that, okay, AI can help us write more emails and it can help us scale certain things. It can help us scale certain things. So then the question is, what do we use that time for? And I love this line. Somebody said, I don't want AI to make my art and music for me so that I have more time for work. I want AI to help me have more time at work uh, uh, or do more of my work so that I have more time for the art and the music. And I wonder if that category of the art and the music includes healthcare. It's like, I don't want the AI to do more of that. I want the AI to do other things so that I have time to pay attention to that. Right. And so it almost becomes this like bifurcated of what are the human activities? What are the ones we want to do more of? Listening to records and cooking and film, all the things where we say that is a uniquely human experience. I want to do more of that. And then the things where you say, oh, we can just outsource that to the machines. And I think we see that in mental health. We see all these pitches for like the AI therapist the AI girlfriend, the AI chat bot, fill in the blank. I think there'll be some adoption there, but I just don't know if that's in the art, music, gardening, and cooking category, or if it's in the thing that we want the machines to do more for us.
You significant role in creating what companies are we investing in?
Hmm.
Is there a human component to care delivery through those companies? Or perhaps are those companies helping humans be more efficient in solving a problem in healthcare, in their personal lives, professionally or otherwise? And can we invest in great companies that provide this great alternative to working more? I think it's you and I have a huge influence over founders and CEOs that we invest in. How can we
Hmm.
create a generation of CEOs who invite and welcome that? I know that my team is more efficient now than they were 6 months ago. I am going to encourage them to use that efficiency and found time differently, to explore creative pursuits, to start family planning, to start diversifying their interests because I know they're going to be better employees for me when they are here doing the work. I think there's going to be this shift, and that has to take place in part through how this next generation of leaders are leading their teams and companies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And it's so true for us. It's we do get to decide because we get pitched those various models, whether it's replacing humans or supporting humans. I do like that term. You've seen it. There's a conference even named Humans in the Loop. Like what platforms, ideas, innovations still say there's a human element to this that we should be fostering, leveraging, maximizing, not removing. And we even have like an AI manifesto at Wildwood we released. And one of those is one of the key tenets of it is that we're long humans, we're long humanity, and that we have a place and we will invest in things that create superpowers for humans as opposed to say, how can we just hire less of them? And I get it. I get it from a cost of goods sold, from a raw dollars and cents. Humans are expensive. We are an expensive cost of goods sold, if you want to think about it from a COGS or from a P&L perspective. But yeah, that's we're in the same boat. We we want to invest in the things that make the human experience better, richer, more fill in the blank, and not just that we are a labor input. I don't fundamentally believe that the human value is as just a labor input to business.
Well said. I think it's really important that we understand how to define what it means to be human. When we
Hmm.
are faced with an alternative to I think we have to understand what makes us human, and then why there are moments in our lives when the human is the better alternative to technology. And I think getting and articulating that well is going to be the make or break for us over the next 1 to 5 years. Where is the human still better because of what makes us uniquely human?
Well, Mel, thank you for your time. We had so many topics I didn't even get to. I wanted to talk about next ventures more and your thesis and more founder advice, et cetera,
Ugh.
et cetera. But I'll just, thank you. Shout out to you and the Next Ventures team, what you're investing in, what you've built. Just so the listener knows, Mel is actually on our advisory board at Wildwood Ventures, and she speaks into what we do and has been a mentor and advisor to us as over the last few years. So thank you. We're so grateful for what you're doing. So excited for more investors that say, let's invest in stuff that promotes the human experience, the human flourishing in some form. Thank you for your time today, Mel.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. It's an honor to work with you. Thanks so much, Jesse.
See you soon.